Barris wiped the grease from his hands with a stained rag, squinting at the hyperdrive coupling that had been giving him trouble for the past 3 hours. The Stellar Wanderer was a good ship, but like most vessels in the Meridian commercial fleet, she'd seen better days. As the chief mechanic aboard this particular freighter, Barris had grown accustomed to coaxing life from dying systems with little more than spare parts and stubborn determination. The intercom crackled to life above his head. All crew to stations. We're approaching the Kepler Station Transit Hub. Prepare for passenger boarding. Barris sighed. Another batch of travelers looking for cheap passage to the outer colonies. The company always packed them in like cargo, maximizing profit over comfort. He'd seen families cramped into spaces barely large enough for one person. But orders were orders, and he needed this job. 20 minutes later, as Barris made his way to his modest cabin for a well-deserved rest, he nearly collided with 2 small figures huddled in the corridor. They were Zilithian children. He could tell by their distinctive silver-blue skin and large, luminous eyes. Twins by the look of them, couldn't be more than 7 or 8 years old in human equivalent. The girl, who seemed to be the older of the two, held her brother protectively. Both children looked exhausted, their travel clothes rumpled and their eyes red from crying. "Hey there," Barris said softly, crouching down to their level. "You two okay?" The girl, Malice, according to the small identification tag on her jacket, looked up at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "We can't find our room," she whispered in accented standard. "The man at the desk said there was a mistake with our booking." Barris frowned. He'd seen this before. Overbooking was common, and passengers without influence often found themselves without accommodations. "Where's your family?" "Your parents?" "Mama is meeting us at Proxima Colony," the boy said, his voice barely audible. "She sent us ahead because of her work. But now we don't have anywhere to sleep, and the journey is 5 days long." The mechanic's jaw tightened. 5 days in the corridors would be rough for anyone, let alone 2 young children. He'd seen passengers curl up in cargo bays or maintenance shafts, trying to stay out of the crew's way. The thought of these kids enduring that made his stomach turn. "What's your mama's name?" Barris asked. "Maybe I can help sort this out with the passenger coordinator." "Malice Keth Vran," the girl said, pronouncing the complex Zilithian surname with practiced ease. "She works with Starships." The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Barris couldn't place it. Probably another mid-level shipping coordinator or logistics manager. The galaxy was full of them. He stood up, his mind made up. "Listen, you two. I've got a cabin. It's not fancy, but it's got a bed and private facilities. You can stay there for the journey." Both children stared at him with wide eyes. "But where will you sleep?" Malice asked. Barris shrugged. "I've got a workbench in engineering that folds out into a cot. I've slept in worse places, believe me. Besides, I spend most of my time down there anyway." The relief on their faces was immediate and overwhelming. Malice threw her arms around his legs in an impulsive hug, while her brother managed a shy smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Mama always says that the stars guide good people to help others." Over the next 5 days, Barris found himself checking on the twins regularly. He brought them extra food from the crew mess, showed them safe places to play in the less-traveled sections of the ship, and even taught them basic stellar mechanics when they expressed curiosity about the ship's operations. The children were bright and eager to learn. Malice had an intuitive understanding of engineering principles that impressed even Barris, while her brother showed an aptitude for navigation systems. They reminded him why he'd fallen in love with space travel in the first place: the wonder, the possibility, the sense that anything could happen among the stars. When the Stellar Wanderer finally approached Proxima Colony, Barris helped the twins gather their belongings. They'd become like family to him over the short journey, and he found himself reluctant to say goodbye. "Will we see you again?" Malice asked as they made their way to the disembarkation lounge. "Maybe," Barris said, though he doubted it. The galaxy was vast, and a mechanic's wages didn't afford much in the way of leisure travel. The lounge was crowded with passengers and their luggage, but Barris spotted the woman immediately. She stood apart from the crowd, her bearing unmistakably commanding despite her travel clothes. She had the same silver-blue skin as the twins, but there was something about her presence that made people unconsciously step aside. "Mama!" Malice and her brother rushed toward the woman, who swept them into a fierce embrace. "My precious ones," she murmured in Zilithian, then switched to Standard as she looked them over carefully. "You're well?" The journey wasn't too difficult. A nice man gave us his cabin, the boy said excitedly. He taught us about hyperdrive configurations. The woman's gaze found Barris, who was hanging back near the entrance. Her large eyes studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You are the mechanic who helped my children?" she asked, approaching him with fluid grace. "Just doing what anyone would do," Barris said, suddenly very aware of his grease-stained coveralls and work boots. "I am Keth Vran Malice of the House of Stellar Winds," the woman said formally. "These are my children, and I owe you a debt." The formal introduction made Barris blink. House names were used by Zilithian nobility, but he'd assumed, "Ma'am, there's no debt. They're good kids and—" "Keth Vran Malice," interrupted Captain Torres, the ship's commanding officer who had just entered the lounge. His face had gone pale. "Your Excellency, I had no idea you were— that is, we didn't realize—" The woman turned to the captain with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Captain Torres, I trust my children's accommodation was satisfactory?" Torres looked between her and Barris, clearly confused and increasingly panicked. There seems to have been some confusion with the booking system. If we had known who they were children traveling alone," Keth Vran Malice said quietly. "Nothing more should have mattered." She turned back to Barris, and her expression softened. "What is your name, mechanic?" "Barris," he said. "Barris Chen." "Well, Barris Chen, it seems I owe you more than gratitude." She reached into her travel bag and withdrew a small device that Barris recognized as a high-end communicator. "This has my personal contact information. When you grow tired of working for people who would let children sleep in corridors, call me." Barris stared at the device. "Ma'am, I don't understand." Captain Torres cleared his throat nervously. "Barris, you might want to know. Her Excellency isn't just in shipping. She owns Meridian Commercial Fleet, all of it. Every ship, every route, every employee," Keth Vran Malice finished smoothly, "including captains who prioritize profit over basic decency." The implication hung in the air like a sword. Torres looked like he might be sick. "But you, Barris Chen," she continued, "you saw 2 frightened children and gave them safety without asking who they were or what you might gain. That is the kind of character I value in the people who work for me." She clasped his hands briefly, the communicator pressed between their palms. "When you're ready for a position that matches your heart as well as your skills, call me. The galaxy needs more people like you." As Barris watched the small family disappear into the crowd, he realized that sometimes the stars really did guide good people to help each other, and sometimes they rewarded those who chose kindness over convenience. He looked down at the communicator in his hands, then up at Captain Torres, who was still staring at him with a mixture of awe and terror. "I think," Barris said slowly, "I might be ready for that call sooner than expected."